President Biden's re-election campaign is winning the fundraising contest by a lot. On Wednesday, the Biden-Harris campaign reported that it took in $21 million in donations during the month of February, a short month, and had a whopping $71 million on hand at the beginning of this month. That's more than double the $33 million Donald Trump's campaign has. While a portion of the money raised for Trump is expected to be spent on his legal bills, President Biden is funneling campaign funds towards blistering attack ads like this one on the question of whether you are better off now than 4 years ago.
And then I see the disinfectant. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside?
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your response to this crisis?
I'd rate it a 10. I think we've done a great job.
What do you say to Americans who are watching you right now who are scared?
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say. Yeah, no, I don't take responsibility at all. We're doing, I think, really, really well.
I'll tell you what. How? 1,000 Americans are dying a day.
They are dying. That's true. And it is what it is.
Joining me now, Jennifer Rubin, opinion writer at The Washington Post and author of Resistance: How Women Saved Democracy from Donald Trump. And Christina Greer, Moynihan Public Scholars Fellow at City College of New York and author of the book Black Ethnics, Race, Immigration, and the Pursuit of the American Dream. Thank you both very much for being here today. Okay, so I want both of your thoughts on the ad we just played, especially you, Jennifer. I'll start with you because you have a column about this in the paper, in the Washington Post tomorrow. Is the Biden campaign on the right track here with that ad?
It is a devilishly clever trap that they have set for him, and they are going to use it to their best advantage. Because 4 years ago, you and I were huddled in our own homes on lockdown. 4 years ago, the economy was contracting wildly. 4 years ago, the murder rate was much higher. 4 years ago, Donald Trump wanted to take away health care. 4 years ago, Donald Trump said that he had a plan to substitute for Obamacare. He never came up with one. So by any measure that you look at, whether it's his effort to destroy the Affordable Care Act and therefore take away insurance from 32 million people, or you look at his approach to crime, which was disastrous. Crime rates were up, going in the wrong direction, or whether you look at the economy, lost jobs, recession. There is no way that the average person, if they're reminded of where they were 4 years ago, would choose to go backwards. You know who's better than he was 4 years ago? Donald Trump, because Donald Trump 4 years ago had not yet been indicted on 91 counts. Yeah. So he was much better off.
Well, let's just be fair. It's not 91 counts anymore. It's 88. Christina, I would love to get your thoughts. And also because 4 years ago, New Yorkers, I can't remember what hour it was either 6 p.m. or 7 p.m., were leaning out their windows in a mass applauding of the first responders who were doing just God's work in trying to protect people from the virus, but also tend to those who were dying alone.
Yeah, absolutely, Jonathan. 4 years ago, we were looking to our then Governor Andrew Cuomo for some sort of guidance in leadership because the president provided none. There were so many people who were concerned about their jobs and their financial security. Parents had no direction as to what they were doing education-wise because the president was essentially just saying, well, it is what it is. As thousands upon thousands, which turned into over 1 million Americans died in a purely callous lack of leadership. So I think Joe Biden needs to stay the course and be really aggressive in reminding Americans not just about the failures of leadership under Donald Trump, but also about what he has been promising he will do if he gets a second term. Before, the first term was a smash and grab. Now he knows to not even employ, good, decent Republicans who actually care about this nation. He won't even bother with those. He'll hire the worst of the worst, the bottom of the barrel, just to help him with his grift. And the RNC should be nervous. The fact that he's using it now as his own financial arm. They won't be running ads like this because the money will go towards Donald Trump in his pockets, which he has every single time he's gotten his hands on anything that can make some money. He puts it directly in his own coffers.
Jennifer, and to keep the conversation going about the money, Let's talk about those fundraising numbers. The Biden campaign has more than double cash on hand from last month than Trump does. What does that tell you? I mean, folks keep focusing on the polls, and Democrats in particular have their hair on fire. But when I see fundraising numbers like this for Biden-Harris, that's to me much more of an indicator of the support for the president.
And the overwhelming number of those are small donors. So those are the people who are really excited about this campaign, and they're giving money. Donald Trump, on the other hand, has not only less money, but fewer donors. He's going in the wrong direction. So whatever enthusiasm he has is located in that very narrow base that he has, that he continually feeds red meat to it. But what's happening is that he's alienating the rest of the country. And as you know, because I rant about it all the time in the paper, the polls are very misleading at this stage. And if you really want to play that game, there are a whole bunch of them now that show Biden either tied or narrowly ahead. But I think what's evident here is that the level of enthusiasm that the president and that the vice president are getting is much higher. You'll notice that Donald Trump comes out maybe once a week, once every other week. Vice President Harris, President Biden are out there multiple times a week. Vice President Harris has been on college campuses getting stellar reviews at HBCUs and other colleges. So I think when you look at the reaction to them, both monetarily and when they show up, I think that's telling. Right.
And Christina, would be remiss if we did not mark today's 14th anniversary of the signing of the Affordable Care Act. And in honor of the occasion, the Biden campaign released this new ad. Let's take a look.
We're determined as ever to defend and strengthen the Affordable Care Act and to make health care a right, not a privilege in America. I know we can do it. And it matters when you have the help of your friends.
The fate of the ACA is on the ballot this year. This isn't the first time we've had to fight for our health care.
I couldn't be prouder of the ACA. It's why we do the work. And nobody knows that better than Joe. That's why he made it a priority to strengthen and build on the ACA. And because he has, more Americans are covered than under any other president, including when I was in office. Now we have a chance to do even more. But that only happens if we send Joe and Kamala back to the White House in November.
Oh, Christina, talk about an all-star team. How important is it for the president to drive home the message that the ACA is under threat if Trump wins?
Absolutely. But, we know that President Biden is actually trying to convince, voters to not stay home. That's part of the Donald Trump strategy. So what he really needs to do is not only talk about his accomplishments and what he plans to do under a second term, but make sure he activates and motivates people who are hearing this Trump rhetoric to say, oh, well, the parties are the same. Because let's be clear, Donald Trump has come with no new ideas. He's only selling whiteness to his supporters. And he knows that the economy is better. He knows that Joe Biden's policies are better for all Americans. And we know that we've seen the Republican Party become the party of taking away not just rights and freedoms, but actual policies that have helped Americans lift up all boats. The importance of the ACA can't be understated.
Right. That campaign is a campaign of subtraction. Christina Greer, Jennifer Rubin, thank you both very much for coming back to the Saturday Show.